and then we collapse the character over, but we put a cushion on it. Okay, we have to get a shock absorber here, because when the legs bend, they're absorbing the impact of the body coming down. Then they have to recover back up again. So our legs are going to straighten back up, but not completely straight. I mean, you could take it straight if you wanted to. Totally up to you. But if you just take it to a partial bend, it might look a little bit better. So we're going to bring it up like that, and then we've got to take the upper body and collapse it over. So again, this I'm going to leave up to you as to how far you want to do this. Okay. If you want to do it something like that, that's okay. But we've got to get those arms to trail. So the arms are going to be coming down, following the path of action. So again, we're into the tail on the double ball bounce, where here's our path of action coming down through like this. Then we're going to have to loop the arms out and back and up. So now that we've gone up to our high point with our legs and our hips, we now have to cushion back down again to absorb the energy. So we're going to bend our legs, but not as far as we did the first time. So it's like the descending energy ball bounce. Remember, each subsequent ball bounce, the squish was less and less on it. Okay, so that's the same principle that we're now applying here, is that each leg bend is now going to get less and less. So now we're going to start to curl the body up here. And our arms are probably going to snap forward. From this position here to this position here. But we've got to get an in-between in there in order to get it to reverse direction. Otherwise, you can't move something 180 degrees like that and not have a drawing in between. It'll pop on you. So we do need a couple of in-betweens in there. We'll talk about the timing on that later and what things you can do with it. So now we're cushioning down, so now we've got to bring it back up again. Straighten the legs just a little bit more. And here's now where we take our upper body and get it up here. And now we're starting to recover with the arms. Like this. And then we do one more cushion down. Just a very, very subtle little buckle here. And the reason for this is that when we have something that has weight and it's working in the real world, gravity always wins. Okay? That's a primary rule. Gravity always wins. Everything always has to settle into a down position. It can't settle back up into an up position. All right? So we have to get that downward buckle on it so that it feels like there's some weight. Okay, now what we're going to do here is you're just going to pull the pelvis forward a little bit and overlap our action on the body. And get those arms to swing back. And then we'll take the legs up just one more time. Actually, what I want to do is I just want to go back to my original pose just to make sure that I'm lining everything up properly. So I'm not getting any drift, or you can see my one foot there has started to drift. Should be right there. So ultimately I want to end up in this position right here. So I need to just go up slightly above and beyond what I've got here as far as the legs go, because then I want to settle back into this position here. And I may want to come back to this one and just do a little bit of a leg buckle on it, just so that I get the gravity wins thing going on. So my legs go back up and then they're going to settle back down again. So now my pelvis is coming forward here. I drag my upper body forward. Shoulders are going to come forward, arms are going to overlap back this way. This is where I'm getting into a little bit of straight ahead animation now. And then, so that should work going back into the final pose now. So, if I take my drawings now, oops, I can just flip them here. You'll see my overall action that I've got. Starting off here, anticipate down, jump up, down, and overlap into my final position. Okay, you can see the final action that I've got going on here at the end. When I snap the body over and then I come back up here, what assignment is that? Seaweed. So I come up, and snap forward, and come up in my final position. Okay, so it's going over, back, into the final position. So you get that overlapping action taking place in the body. Same thing with the arms. Arms are like the pendulum swing to a certain extent, or the tail and the double ball bounce. So this is essentially, it's a double ball bounce with a tail, but instead of the tail being a tail, it's the arms now. Now we're putting the cushioning action on the legs. All right, so from this point now, I have all my key positions, but you'll notice that I have absolutely no labeling going on here at all. Okay? There's no label. So if I walked out the door and tripped as I went out and hit the balcony and these drawings went all the way down to the first floor, and I had to go back and start to put them back in order, I could do it, but it'd take me a long time. So what we need to do is we need to have some form of labeling on these things. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in here, and on the opposite corner, I'm going to label them A, B, C, D, E, F, G, all the way through. So I've got up to M. Now we go back into my first key pose again. So now I have them all in sequence. I have them labeled properly so that I know which order that they go in. So when I go down to sit down and shoot them, if anybody messes them up, they're all still in order. My next stage now is to take the drawings and shoot them as a pencil test. So you go to Toon Boom, open it up, set it to the default setting of 2 frames, shoot all your drawings, and then you start to play. You decide how long do you want this to be held for, and you just start plussing frames in. Okay? You just keep plussing, look at it, make a decision. Do you like the way it moves? Is it moving too fast? Is it moving too slow? If it's moving too fast, add more frames in. If it's moving too slow, minus frames out. Just keep playing with the timing. Right? Once you've got your timing down, then you're ready to go. Okay? But it's all a matter of, does it look right? Okay? There is no set number. Okay? I don't know what your final number is going to be. In the other example, I think my final key ended up being P. Okay? So I have more keys in the other version where he does the overlapping action from the hips instead of the chest. I don't know what your number is going to be. It could be any number at all. And I'm not going to dictate what your number is going to be because you dictate that. You're the animator. So the only way you're going to know what your numbers are going to be is if you play with your timing. And once you play with your timing, you make a decision, does this feel and look the way I want it to feel and look? And you just keep playing. Okay? Once you've settled on it and you look at it and you say to yourself, that's exactly the way I want it timed out. Then you sit down with your exposure sheet, and on Toon Boom on the side there will be an exposure sheet that will show you how many frames you've got. What you do is you then transcribe your information over. So you start at frame number 1, which is your first drawing, and that's A. You just write in A. Then you count the number of frames in between, and on your exposure sheet you write in B. Then you count the number of frames, you write in C. Count the number of frames, D, E, F, all the way through. Then what you do is you go back onto your exposure sheet and you look for every other frame. And every other frame is going to be an in-between. So if you count off and you've got 3 in-betweens in there, you know that on your timing chart you've got to fill in 3 in-betweens. So A is obviously your first key pose. So this is going to be number 1. So you throw a timing chart on the side. You can do this for every single last drawing even before you've shot it. Put a blank timing chart on the side here. Don't put any numbers down here, just put a blank timing chart on. And then once you look at your exposure sheet, you count how many frames you've got. So like I said, if you've got 3 in-betweens here, that means that this is 1, 2, 3, 4, this is going to be 5. And the only question you have to ask yourself at that point is, do I want to slow in or do I want to slow out? Do I want it to be evenly spaced? Do I want to put a favor in? those are the only options you have, right? So you question whether or not you want to do one of those things. So usually going from a major key position like this, where your character is static, you usually slow into the action, right? You build up momentum. It's like driving in the car, you step on the gas, the speedometer slowly builds up to the full speed that you want to go. So from this one here to this one here, I want my butt to go down to that final position there. So you decide, do I want it to hit hard at the butt down point on B, which means that your timing chart, just grab a blank sheet of paper here so I don't mess up this drawing. Let me do it over here. So here's your timing chart. So you want to hit hard into this key position here. So then you're going to slow in and it's going to hit hard. Do you want to put a little cushion on the end of it? So you drop in another in between there. Do you want it to slow in and slow out? That's a slow in. That's a slow out. So you simply decide how many frames you want to have that take place over. Okay, and that's partially in your timing issue. So when you shoot it, if you've got these number of frames for in-betweens in, then that's how long it's going to take. Right? So again, once you've done your timing charts and you've filled in your numbers, so this is number 1, 2, 3, 4 is your halfway breakdown, 5, 6, 7, 8 is the next key. B is 8. Right? So then when you go to shoot that, once you've done your in-betweens, you shoot it all on 2s, and then you go back and you make another decision. Is this too slow? Shoot this one on 1s, see what it looks like. Shoot this one on 1s, see what it looks like. Or take the drawings out completely, see what it looks like. Right? My default would be that if you've done the in-between and it looks like it's too slow, shoot the in-between on 1s. Don't delete it completely. It'll just fill in the action a little bit better and make it look creamier. Okay, it looks nicer the more drawings you've got into it. Right? So rather than taking the drawing completely out and leaving the gap there, but still shooting stuff on 2s means you're going to make it faster, leave the drawing in and shoot it on 1s, or shoot the 2 previous drawings on 1s and fill the space in. Right? You've got them done, you might as well use them. You understand what I'm saying? Okay. So now, once you've gone through that and you've done all your timing, take a look at it, make your decisions, decide whether or not it's working the way you want it to work. If it is, great. If it's not, then make your little revisions to it. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is just doing this type of an in-between here, going from my D to my E. This action here is a pretty big action because you can see the angle of my arm here is down like this, and the angle of this arm is up like this. It's more than 180 degrees that I'm moving my arm. And this is a very fast action. Okay, so when you time this out, you're probably only going to have space for one in-between in there. And so when you drop your in-between in, you have to get your arm to move from here all the way up to here. Right? Your path of action is going to swing around like this as your body comes up. So your body is in this position here. It's going to move to this position here. Your halfway position on this is going to be approximately here. And so your shoulder, if your shoulder point on this one is up here and your shoulder point on this one is here, the path of action on that is going to swing around there. There's your shoulder point right there. So what we have to do is we have to get the arm from that position, swinging the elbow through and up to that position. Your elbow also has a path of action where it's going from here to here. It's going to swing through and forward like this and loop around to that position there. So your elbow will most likely connect right about there. Okay, this is just pure mechanics that we're talking about now, right? So you have to decide on paths of actions for everything and where something is going from and to. So then you decide where is your arm going to go here. Okay, that would be roughly about the halfway position. But when you shoot that on 2s, it's just going to blink on and off. Because your arm is way back here, it's going to pop here, and then it's going to appear back up here, right? So we've seen this happen before on other in-betweens that you've done, mostly in your walk cycle. Remember on your arm swings, when you did your arm swing? If you had one drawing where the arm suddenly popped out of its path of action, it looked weird. It made it jerk. Well, that's what this is going to do. It's going to jerk if you just have that single drawing of the arm there. So there is a solution to this. It's called a smear. It's where you've got a huge distance that you have to move something from and to, but what you do is you blend it so that it looks like it's covering more space from here to here. Right? We want to get the arm to travel this distance here. So what we do is we put multiple arms in here to create a strobing effect, to make it look like the arm is moving very, very quickly over that distance. So now when I flip it, see how fast it looks like it's moving? It looks better that way. Okay? So it creates a strobing effect. It's like my finger moving from here. If I move my finger from this position all the way over to that position that quick, that's very fast. So what I do is I put an in-between from here. I put an in-between that looks like this. All my fingers going like that, and then over to there. And it makes more sense because it covers that blank space open there, right? And it creates an interesting, cool effect. Now when you go into the website, if you go into the double take assignment in second semester, take a look at that and you'll see lots of examples of different types of takes and smears. There's examples from Kitty Cornered, which is a Porky Pig cartoon with some Sylvester type cats, where the cats are trying to get into the house so that they don't freeze at night, and so they pretend to be Martians. And there's one scene where Porky Pig is lying in bed and he hears on the radio that Martians have landed, and it's actually the cats inside the radio giving this announcement that Martians have landed.
We interrupt this program to bring you a special news bulletin. Flash, country overrun by men from Mars. Millions of Martians are landing in our fields. Strange creatures are dropping from the stratosphere. Crisis in Washington. President asks people to be calm. Everything's going mad, I tell you. Utterly mad. Stay tuned into the station for late reports. Hey, what do the man say, mister? Huh? What do the man say? Huh?
Oh, he says men from Mars are landing on the Earth. But that's silly. Well, good night. Good night. Good night, Butterball.
And he starts freaking out, so his head moves all the way across the screen, back and forth as he goes, moo, 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 Martians! And so he's smearing, basically.
Men from Mars!
And you'll see, I've taken frame captures from it, and you'll see his face is actually, it's over here on one side, where he's looking in this direction here. And then the next position, he's way over here like this, looking in that direction. But in between those two drawings, they have a drawing that looks like this. Spreads his face across that open space to make it look nicer. Okay, so you can do it with all sorts of different things. The arms, there's an example there in Baby Bottleneck. Porky Pig grabs a control arm and pulls it down, and one of the drawings is a smear of his arm. And it looks kind of cool, where it's the leading part of his arm is like this, and the back part is actually peeled like this to make it look like it's swishing very hard in this direction here, and then there's a really big hand. It's out like this. It looks very bizarre. Okay, so it's just to fill in the space to make sure that the action is being shown properly and it doesn't look like it's popping. Right? So this is an instance where you would use a smear in this case here. Right? So anytime you've got a very fast action where you can only drop in one in between and the distance is huge, use the smear. Okay? But use it wisely. All right?